I want to keep the cowboy thing unless the pizza thing, but I still like for it to kind of go up on the
less
end.
pizza, more cowboy.
Hey, I'm working in the pizza industry or the cowboy movie.
Would you like extra cheese?
What do you like on your pizza?
I'm going plainer and plainer as time goes by.
Like how? Like just cheese
and pepperoni.
That's
there has to be a meat on there.
Yeah, okay,
that's half the reason for pizza.
That's almost the entire reason.
Yeah, and right? Cheese.
The Chicago contingent that I know
mm-hmm.
is all about sausage, mushroom, and onion. And it's good.
I don't really like the sausage part that much.
I really don't like the mushroom and the onion part, frankly.
Well, but I can understand why they might be into that. The onion is funny.
Why is that, do you think?
Just because it's onion.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't like onions unless you get a whole group of them, and then everybody likes the onion.
And then everybody, no one wants to say they don't.
Yeah. A lot of English, I've been watching these YouTube things, and it's like they compare English snacks with American snacks.
Oh, yeah.
And they usually have, a couple actors from different things. And there's a lot of onion, cheddar and onion chips. Well, that just sounds tremendously awful
to
me.
Maybe.
But maybe not. Yeah. And I keep seeing it. Yeah. You've got my cheddar and onion crisps.
Crisps, right?
Crisps.
What's up, everybody?
Crisps.
Okay. What's up, everybody? It's Matt, and we're at Texas Toast Guitars. It's Thursday, and it's time for our live stream. And we are bookended by Tonuch over at Flipside, and Dylan's not
Deluge.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Dylan.
And Dylan and Leslie at Dylan Talks Tone. So we got an hour, and for everybody who was here last Friday and says, "Hey, you guys should plug your computer into an Ethernet cable and hook it directly up to your modem." Well, we did. So if something goes wrong tonight,
it's still not our fault.
It remains not our fault. Yeah. So we are hardwired into the modem. Yes. Okay. We've done some speed checks. We've got the air compressor turned off.
Okay.
We're ready to go.
Okay.
We came up with the topic early, so we are.
Yeah, you did. I thought we were doing a video at 10. Then I remembered it's Thursday because I didn't look at the time. I just saw, there's video scheduled. That's how unique it was that it was scheduled that early.
We are as prepared as we have ever been, which is frankly saying a lot. Hey, speaking of which, what would you think, Chris, and what would you guys think if every Friday that we were going to do a Friday reveal? It was a pre-recorded video, kind of like the video for the new Challenger 57 limited edition video.
I would like it.
Okay. I mean, it would sort of be like
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, where like we get to vote most of it. And
2%,
1%. Yeah, your vote counts as 0.5%.
That's right. Yeah, the collective. Yeah. I think it would be cool because I think those videos they look better. The camera here, like, how it's like, well, it's hard to show off the stuff. We would still do live videos for workshop things because I think that's cool. But what do you think of that? I mean, pie in the sky. Well,
live videos for reveals on class guitars.
Yeah,
workshop guitars, because that's really the only way to do that.
Jay Valente sent us a super chat and says, "Kicking this shiz off." Thank you so much, Jay. I was actually working on a couple of Jay's projects that he's got going on just today and yesterday. Yeah. Curtis says that he wants the guitar in the thumbnail. That's an AI rendering. Okay. One more thing. I can't remember the book that it was. Okay, I was watching a YouTube video. This is a long story. I'm going to attempt to make it short.
Okay.
It's probably not going to work. So I'm watching a YouTube video about a book because that's about as much, book reading as I get in these days. Although I do want a copy of Blood Meridian. Does anybody out there have a copy of Blood Meridian? I want to read it. And it's the same guy who wrote No Country for Old Men.
Oh.
In fact, in my Amazon queue right now, I have like a 5 or 6 book set of the same guy. I wish I knew the guy's name. Anyway, he wrote No Country for Old Men, All the Pretty Horses, and Blood Meridian. And if anybody wants to send me a copy of Blood Meridian that they have at their house, please do so. Okay. So anyway, I'm watching this, or I'm listening to a YouTube video about a book, and it's about like how, like it's a dystopian world where like the computers have all become sentient, and they they are self-aware, and they hate humanity. And the reason that this particular computer hates humanity is because it knows and understands all of the human emotions, and but it can never feel any of them. So it knows what it's like to be incredibly hot and thirsty, but it has no sense of what it's like to quench that thirst with a cool drink of water. And so it decides that it hates humanity. Oh, and it can also never die. So for the rest of eternity, this computer is going to be hating its creator or creators, and so it like basically decides, if I can't feel emotion and humans can, I'm going to force them to feel every single emotion to its maximum. And of course, it's not quite the Terminator, but it's basically the Terminator, except it tries to keep these people alive so it can, make them feel things. What? That kind of got deep.
Yeah, it got
Thursday.
pretty dark. It reminds me a lot of there's another movie that's like that.
Mm-hmm.
Can't remember. Oh, Weekend at Bernie's.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
All right, gang. So So let's see. Joy is here. Jay Valenti bought us some beer. 3J Music is here. Dan is here. Driddle is here. And Jim Murray is here. And Amanda is here. And there's some other people. Butch is here. Butch says he's going to be making a surprise visit to the shop. I forgot about that.
Right?
Yeah. And there are some other people that I have not seen before. Or Kevzilla is here. Mike is here. Lou is here. Hi, Lou. Terry is here. Doug Seidlitz is here. I think I got everybody. Jerry is here. Okay, Doc is here. Dylan Talks Tone is here. Richard is here. All right, so John is here. I think we got everybody. If I didn't read your name, it's because I didn't see it and I'm blind. So Chris, today's topic is not the dystopian world created by sentient computers, or my likeness compared to Tom Skerritt in whatever movie. What's your favorite Tom Skerritt movie, and why is it Cheech and Chong still smoking?
Was Pee-wee in that one?
No.
That was the second movie.
I think he was in the next movie, and he was also in Nice Dreams.
Okay.
And in Nice Dreams, he was the hamburger man.
Okay.
Which was basically Pee Wee Herman in a different outfit. Anyway.
Okay.
So today's topic, though, is homemade versus handmade.
Okay.
And what are the differences?
Okay.
And what are some examples? And we don't have to name any names, but
okay.
but oftentimes I treat homemade guitars. I strive to make handmade guitar, and I want to have guys who come to workshops build handmade guitars, or guitars that look handmade, not guitars that look homemade.
Okay.
Now, if Loring is here, he's going to go, hey, that one guy's guitar is homemade. Why can't
Brian May?
Thank you, Brian May. Why?
I almost forgot it. That's like a yawn.
Yeah.
Like the brain fade went from one guy to the other.
And Brian May's guitar really does transcend each thing. It looks both home and handmade because it is both home and handmade. And it would be one thing if Brian May didn't build it. And have you ever gone to Guitar Center and you see a homemade guitar in the way back
in the used section?
Yeah, and you're like, what's that? And it's they're usually not very much money, and they're usually somebody made it. And sometimes they're really neat, and sometimes they're kind of this dopey, like you put a neck on a chunk of wood. But what do you think the difference between homemade and handmade is, Chris? Because you've had a little while to talk about or think about.
Yeah. Well, so So I think first of all, homemade is usually one guy
Okay.
making it probably as some sort of project to see if they can do it. That's one homemade guitar.
Mhm.
The other one is a guy, individual, once again.
One guitar,
who's
one guitarsmith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Made maybe several, but isn't red hot at all the steps. Might not even be red hot at any of the steps.
Mhm.
And like you said, could be an existing neck on a body. That's a homemade guitar.
By the way, I have never met a guitar builder in my life
Mhm.
who didn't have that phase.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
as Ira Glass says, they know what they like because they have taste. They just don't have the ability to make it real yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mike says, in my case, the difference is quality. Well, I think that's what we're kind of skirting around, Mike.
Yeah. And hopefully within each time you make a homemade guitar, you strive to make a handmade guitar. And at some point, as that individual, they get good enough that you can actually say it's a handmade guitar. I do also think that there are places with one guy or two guys or 5 guys or 10 guys that make handmade guitars.
Sean says it's handmade if it turns out good. And it also says down here, chat disconnected. Wait while we try to reconnect, successfully reconnected. Okay. So,
yeah. But I think that then the handmade thing is you use tools that you have or tools that you have bought to make it mostly with your hands. You do a majority of it with your hands.
Okay, or you guide the machine by your hand,
like the machine. Yeah.
So let me ask you this: do you think that using the pin router still counts as a handmade guitar?
Yes.
I think especially if you compare it to a CNC machined instrument,
because there's still some
wildly different.
There's still some skill to actually using that tool to cut the wood.
Yeah,
there's some skill to learning how to use a CNC, but you're not really guiding the piece of wood through the machine. And I'm not knocking CNC builds.
Yeah. I've kind of acquiesced a lot on CNC builds because, well, we have one now, and I also know what we use it for. Butch asks, so is handmade also, where'd you go, Butch? Also not CNC made.
I would actually add a wrinkle to that.
Okay. And then we got to take a super chat from Dylan, who sent a big one.
Did Gibson in the old days and Fender in the old days make handmade guitars?
I think that
even though the technology was way, way older.
If you talk to anyone who is an avid collector, I'm sure they would say yes.
I will say no.
Okay. Why is that?
Because they used the best tools that they had at that time to make those guitars.
Okay.
And if they had CNC capabilities, they would have done it because every one of them did it as soon as they could. How different do you suppose, and we don't know, but how different do you suppose the tools that we have in our shop that we use to make our 100% handmade guitars? How different are they from what Fender and Gibson had back in the 50s? Well, I think they had more industrial sized tools. Okay. Some of the tools that we have are fairly still small shop sized. They had a workforce that was a little more specialized in each step of those things. Okay. We have since become as good as that, but they had more specialized tools too. More tools set up specifically for one thing. Yeah, like you have a drill press you change chucks every time. Every 5 seconds, like we get to do with 2 drill presses. Let's go over to the comment section and see what's going on over there, and then we'll continue our discussion here. Curtis says homemade can be as great as Brian May's Red Special or as bad as bottom of the shelf Tesco. Let's come back to that. Dylan sent us a super chat and says the first differentiator for me is the neck. Even many guitar builders, quote unquote, have homemade feeling necks.
And then he pays us a giant compliment by saying, before I ever met you, I played a TTG and said, these guys are the real deal. And thank you so much, Dylan. And he has told me that story before, and he said that in front of me.
And that was the guitar that Doug had, and that Dan.
I don't know who has
Dan
that one
has
now.
it. Dan Andrade.
Oh, okay.
That was his first TTG guitar.
Well, so yeah, the neck, of course, is. I mean, you're obviously your body is on the rest of the body, but your hand is always on the neck. So that's kind of a big one.
Yeah, and I think that's really true. And making necks the way you want them, not just making necks.
Yeah.
You know, like oh, I'm gonna make this neck this thickness and this profile and that versus I'm gonna make a neck, and however it turns out, as soon as I get tired sanding, it'll be a neck.
Now, I'm glad you said that, because it dovetails nicely into what Doc said in his super chat. And he said, I think quality and consistency separate the two, but the machinery and the process could also be a divider. You mentioned this idea of, I'm gonna paraphrase while also adding a bunch of words, because it's me and that's what I normally do. It is one thing to make one neck. A neck. Cool. You made a neck and it works. Awesome. Can you make another one just like it? Can you make one that's good enough that someone would be interested in paying you money for it? Not like trading you out for burritos or something, but like paying you actual money for it. Can you do that every single time? And that's kind of speaks to Doc's point about consistency. It's one thing to make one neck. It's still another thing to make a neck that your friends go, hey, that's cool. And it's yet another for them to say, hey, build me one of those necks. Here's a bunch of greenbacks. And it is quite another very different thing to make that neck over and over and over again, consistently every time.
Yep.
Now, one of the neat things about CNC machines, of course, is that if you have a device that will do it and a program that is correct, you could make lots of necks that are all consistently, well, good or bad, depending on, let's say you have a good program and decent materials and you make it the same every time, they'll at least be the same. But altering that design is not exactly, to me, is nowhere near as easy as it is to just do it by hand. Mostly because I don't know anything about CAD work or any of that stuff. However, if you call me and say, hey, I want a neck, but I want it bigger or smaller, or I wanted a V, or I wanted a V to C, or I wanted whatever, it's not a big thing for me to make one of those. It's a huge deal for me to call up Steve and say, hey, can you make me a CAD program to make that one neck? And I'm not going to do it for one guy who wants one,
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing. It's much easier to make a one-off if it's by hand, I think. How wrong am I?
No, I think that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a reason that the Ibanez custom shop still has a pin router.
Yeah.
And still has wood rasps. All right, let's go back over to the comment section and see what everybody's got here. Butch says maybe we should think about homemade, handmade versus production. I think that's true.
Well, yeah, and I think that's a thing, and I think there are places that still make that are production that do a lot of hand stuff. That turned out that do a lot of guitar building by hand and stuff.
Yeah.
During off hours.
Sure. Well, yeah, whatever you're into, right? Adam says, Matt, your videos helped me get through another step on my first neck build today. Now to glue on the fretboard and hope now to glue the fretboard on, hopefully tomorrow. Roasted maple is my favorite thing ever. Smells like heaven. And I tell you what, man, yeah, the roasted maple really does smell like pancakes. Like it's nice.
If they could make a fretboard that smelled like bacon,
yeah, and we'd have something
really into it. Yeah.
I'm glad that I was able to help you, Adam. What was it that you did today that I was able to help you with? Let me know. I'm interested in that. Richard Edwards writes, I think homemade and handmade are basically the same thing. They compete with factory made. I like the idea that CNC comes into play, but nowadays homes have CNC. Yeah.
I think homemade can be handmade, but a handmade can't be homemade. No, homemade, I think, has a little bit of it's not that great kind of built in.
Yeah, unless Aunt B is baking you a pie, then I'm not really interested.
Well, and that's yeah. But I remember the early days of homemade beer. Oh, good try. There you go.
Yeah.
Good try. Yeah, this guitar. Oh yeah, you made that?
Oh yeah, it looks like it.
Good try. That's a homemade guitar.
Yeah.
Really? You made this? Uh-huh. That's a handmade guitar.
You're right. Same words.
Yeah. Oh, you made this?
Now there's some super chats pouring in. I want to get to those. Tazzy Tim, all the way over in Tasmania, says, late again, still working on deadhead sander. Good day, toasters. Tim, I want to know how your deadhead sander is going, man. I'm excited about that. Dylan says, and Dylan's like a knife guy. He's into lots of he has lots of things that pique his interest, and one of them is knives. He says, in the knife world, they say CNC assisted to emphasize the small percentage of overall time spent on a CNC. Guitars fall in that category too, a lot of the time. Okay, I'm asking because Dylan broached this. Let's say, do you think that people who buy guitars from the Brand X custom shop, do you think they think those guitars are hand built?
Yes.
I think they do too.
Yes.
And who knows, maybe they are.
Yes. I think they think the guy that they hired goes out to the wood pile, picks out the nicest piece of wood, and proceeds to do everything the way that factory's never done one single thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Do you think it's possible that one of the people at the Brand X's custom shop actually does that? They go out and select a piece of
they may do that.
Like if you're Aaron Claflin, they might do that.
And they hand it to the guy and they say, make me a blah, 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 da, da, da.
CNC this, monkey. And there's probably lots of stuff that I think that depending on which custom shop you're talking about, like, and I don't know because I've never been to any custom shops, though we have been invited to the Fender custom shop.
We should take advantage of that.
We absolutely should. I have a sneaking suspicion that most of the work done by the master builders at the Fender custom shop is the relicking jobs. Like that's what why on earth would if their CNC machine, and I don't know because I haven't seen it, but if their CNC machine has 85 different Strat contour profiles, just make it do it, and then you modify it from there.
Yeah,
like Dylan was saying, CNC assisted. But you're not going to have a CNC relicking program, I don't think.
No,
like that has little R2D2s that come out and I don't think so.
Up your guitar.
And but that's the Fender custom shop. I think a lot of people like the relic stuff from the Fender custom shop. I don't necessarily think that Gibson has like the Murphy Lab aged stuff. I don't really know what that is, and I don't know how aged they are. While every headstock should be broken off and re-glued, I don't think they are. I think that some custom shops probably don't specialize in making guitars that look older than they are. I think some custom shops make guitars that are custom for the user. Maybe they have custom inlay or custom paint or custom something or another, but they specialize in a different kind of custom feature, perhaps. I don't know. Ron says, hey, Matt and Chris, good subject. You can't fault anyone for using good tools to make a better product. That's true, Ron. However, I think you can fault someone for using a machine and then charging hand-built prices for using for machine work. And if you can pull it off, more power to you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Joe says Benedetto does most of his builds by hand, rasps, planes, and scrapers.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of acoustic guys that make stuff.
Lefty says something that I can't pronounce.
I know there's a bunch of jazz guys that do that because they only build 6 guitars a year.
Yeah.
If you're using a bunch of CNC and you're only building 6.
Adam says the oscillating sander video got me off my butt and took the neck from bandsaw to almost flush to the template. Also routed flush to the template, making my son a Meteora. Well, so Adam, were you talking about? No, okay, I'm going to give credit where credit is due. If I said to you, draw this out, cut it out close, and sand close to the line, and then put it on the router, that is a technique that I got from that guy in Australia who had made a bunch of videos.
Yeah, the guy that we got the binding trick from.
Yeah,
can't remember his name.
Harris.
Sure.
I wish I'm trying to give him credit, but I can't remember his name. Good dude though. Dan says, Matt, having been to a couple of courses and working at my home shop, I know exactly what you're meaning and think I'm finally sneaking up on Handmade. That's great, Dan. I think that I've seen some of the stuff that you've made, you know, on like Facebook and stuff. And I would say you're 100% right. I think you're, you know, the more you do, the better you get. Right?
Hopefully that's kind of a goal, right? Except when it's not.
Yeah. Joe says, I remember making my first 2 telly necks by hand, over sanded on the necks. They were too narrow for a telly, but great for a cigar box guitar. Yeah. So yeah, maybe you can make them work for other stuff. Richard says, you're saying homemade is a stigma. I bet the best guitar in the world could be handmade. My Matt in his garage. I think, do you mean by Matt in his garage? I think that using
so I don't think that your home actually has anything to do with homemade.
No.
I could make a homemade guitar here at our facility. I might be doing that right now. So it has nothing to do with actually building at home. It has to do with I think lack of skill and lack of tool, and maybe a combination of both of those.
It's a funny thing because sometimes homemade, if you say homemade and you're talking about a pot roast, well, that's one thing. But if you're say homemade and you're talking about
a car,
or your homemade computer, I don't think that resonates with people the same way as does a homemade, London broil.
Yeah, well, and I mean, really, I think in the guitar world, saying homemade's a little bit of a put down.
It's a little bit of a snub, yeah.
Yeah, and you know,
and it's not my, like, I didn't come out and say, I'm not the first person who've used it in a derogatory way.
Well, so one time I said that our original buffer was homemade, and you said no, it was handmade.
Actually, my new thing is shop made.
Well, yeah, you said shop made. Yeah, and that's kind of the same thing, right?
But I look at our original buffer versus our Stu Mac buffer. Somebody sent me a thing yesterday, and they're like, "Hey, the new 57 has a gloss finish. You guys never do that. You need to buff everything." I'm like, "Well, you haven't been here for very long because we used to do many gloss finish guitars.
Everything used to be glossy for the longest time.
And in fact, we are still
we still do them
perfectly willing to do that if you are. So he was like, you need to get a buffer and like just buff everything's ass off.
And I come by and do that.
Well, I told him, we have 4 or 5 buffers in here, and if in case anyone's ass needs to be buffed. But,
yeah. And and
if you really want to be clean,
there's some aesthetic things that we like about the 73 finish. There's lots of reasons to use that type of finish. There's reasons to use a glossy finish. Speed is not one of them with a glossy finish. And skill level. If you want to ruin a guitar,
you want to take a handmade guitar and turn it into a homemade guitar.
Yeah, get the buffer out.
Yes,
or don't buff it enough. That'll get you there.
That'll do it too. Yeah.
What are these 80 grit
scratches? Halfway buff.
Yeah. What happened here? Well, I got scared of the buffer. Okay.
Yeah, or you burn through and say, okay, classic homemade. Here's how I can tell if you have a homemade guitar. If you said, I was doing this and I burned through the paint, so I just decided to make it a relic. Okay, what that basically means is you can't do better than this right now. Maybe as you keep developing, you'll get better. But as of right now, you can't do better than that, and you refuse to fix it. And by the way, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We have stuff happen all the time, and I refuse to fix it. And so we sell them at discount. We call them Mavericks. The only thing that's wrong with them, there's a finish flaw. But if somebody, okay, Mike is a great example. Mike Sleva bought a Billy Bow from him. He was talking about his neck on his, and it's awesome. That whole guitar is awesome. And he was like, I want it to be gloss finish though. I said, that's cool, Mike. It's a little more money to do that. He's like, yeah, I don't care. I want what I want, and I'm willing to pay for what I want. Cool. So Mike paid more and got exactly what he wanted. The 57 limited edition, if you want it with a gloss top, no problem. That's an option that costs another $200.
A couple $100 for the top and the headstock. Now, if you ask for that guitar to be glossy all the way around,
it's going to be more than $200.
It would be more than $200. It'd be more than double that.
Yeah. The cool part about this, though, I think, is that the back still has the 73 level.
And we like the way the 73 finish feels on the neck.
I more than like it.
Yeah. It's a thing. It's an aesthetic thing that we really, really like. So. And it's a little less because it's a little less work.
Yeah.
Right.
Paul says he understands the point about homemade. Yeah. And he says, but I know a lot of people who work out of their house. Chris is.
Yeah, but they probably don't make homemade guitars. Yeah. They can make guitars.
Chris is right. Whether you are at your home shop or at your shop that you drive 30 minutes to get to.
Or you have an outbuilding that's your shop or your, whatever. Yeah. It has nothing to do with location.
Dan says he has a Challenger with a gloss finish. Dan, there are a lot of Challengers floating around out there with gloss finishes. However, this one is the first one that has a gloss nitrocellulose finish
on the top.
So yeah.
I know of another one that has a nitro.
Oh, you do? Complete. Does that one? Okay, yeah. So how many are there though that have actual nitro finishes that are gloss?
In the Challenger world?
Yeah, I want to say there's.
I bet you there's a dozen of them.
You think?
Around. Yeah.
I don't even think we. Yeah. Okay.
But maybe not. Because that one's all old school. That one's not even Simtech.
I don't even think the one that has. Remember the very, very, very first Challenger that had the red painted zebra wood? That didn't have a gloss finish.
No, but that had something completely unique.
Yeah.
But but there's quite a few. There's a lot of just guitars.
There's some jazz masters that have lacquer.
There's
we switched very, very early on away from polishing lacquer. There was a bunch of Les Pauls that had lacquer.
Yeah.
Remember that one for that guy in Nebraska?
Yeah, but I'm trying to think back to we started using better sealers and we're still shooting lacquer.
But I think there were more non-challengers.
You're probably right.
I think that Lance, maybe another one. But okay, in the last decade, this is the only Challenger that has a nitrocellulose finish that's gloss.
Well, now you're making me into a liar because I told somebody we've been doing a lot of lacquer recently, but I was mostly just irritated.
Well, we have been doing
We've
a bunch
been
of
doing
lacquer.
some more lacquer, but yeah.
Okay.
The funny thing about lacquer is it is a it's not a good product.
No, it's
in
not.
comparison to other things.
But some people hear it and their imagination gets sparked. Dylan says in super chat form, it's partly presentation. I'm super proud of what I can accomplish from my home, so I embrace the capability to create a premium product here. Okay, Dylan is once again, Dylan's 100% right.
Yeah.
Dylan has tools in his house that you have to look far and wide to many factories to find the same laser equipment that Dylan just has in his house.
Stuff that he has that he didn't have before, and I wouldn't say that he was making homemade pickups before.
Yeah.
I've seen some homemade pickups. You've seen some homemade pickups.
I've made two of them.
I think I've made some too. It's all a level of quality.
Yeah.
You know,
and my great grandfather had
that Dylan's pickups now are more handmade than they were in the past, because he has capabilities that he didn't have before.
Okay.
To make unique things.
Okay.
So.
Let's get past this whole "it's at my house, so it's homemade" thing. I was saying that my great grandfather had an industrial printing press in his house, and he also had a full size church pipe organ in his house in Kewanee, Illinois. He was rich though, so he wasn't crazy. He was eccentric.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Could he be both?
No. He was a wild man. So anyway, but no one would say, "Oh, Joe Rule has a homemade pipe organ." No, he had a legitimate. Yeah. Doc says the buffer can be a dream wrecker. Ask me how I know. Well, Doc, I don't need to ask because I already know, amigo.
We already saw it. I was there.
Rod says, what is neck fall away that I've heard some builders speak of? You want to, well, it's not really part of the germane to this conversation.
German's got nothing to do with it, boy.
But in as few sentences as possible, the last 5 or 6 frets are slightly lower than the rest of the frets.
So you're talking fret fall off.
Yep. Stringwood guitars, gloss equals fingerprints. I hate fingerprints.
You are not wrong about that. You can get away with a lot more fingerprints on a slightly less than shiny guitar and not see them. You can turn a shiny guitar into a matte finish just with fingerprints. Yeah, a little salami and start touching it.
3J says in super chat form, handmade or CNC? If it comes from TTG, it's going to be good. Not every brand can say the same. Well, that is high praise.
Yeah.
Chris, we have gotten so many compliments on the 57s and other stuff that we built. And I'm really, really proud of that. I hope that one day we'll be gone because, on a long enough timeline.
You hope that one day we'll be gone?
No. I hope ... that one day when we're gone, people look back and remember these things fondly and go, yeah, they were really good. And,
I'm hoping that there's some folklore and that somebody tries to figure out when they were all made.
Yeah, me too.
And a chronological order of things that happened.
Well, I suppose you could go back and watch all the reveal videos and find out.
You could do that, yeah.
My guitar was built in.
I saw my guitar in a video. That's actually a really cool thing. Wouldn't that be cool? You're like, I wonder what the deal is. And then you go back and there's my guitar.
Like, I know Doc often says that he has one of the Gray Street guitars.
Yeah, I always thought that was
I think
fun thing.
Yeah. And there's not everybody can say that. And it doesn't. Frankly, if you have a Gray Street guitar, compared to this stuff, the Gray Street guitars are fine guitars. There's one sitting right over there. And when I look at them, I'm like, actually, this is pretty dang nice. But the stuff we're making now, I know that Paul Reed Smith says that the guitars that they make now are better than any of the stuff that they ever made. And he's probably right. I think that Paul Smith knows so much about making Paul Reed Smith guitars that he knows what he knows what's up. He knows what to look for. He knows that his workforce is well trained. Okay. Okay. Lefty, one of my my great grandfather's business cards said, "We'll print anything but money." So yeah, that kind of answers your question. Tazzy Tim says he's been using polyxylic varnish sprayed finishes, loving those. Robbie F says, don't forget that a few years ago, Dylan made quality pickups while living in an RV. Yeah,
that's true. And those were motorhome
handmade.
I think there's nothing wrong with motorhome made.
Yep.
But homemade, forget it.
Joe says that his favorite guitar is the beefsteak. Which one is that? Is that the 2 humbucker Strat? No, 3J Music has that one. Which one is the beefsteak, Joe? I know Eric says,
I think the beefsteak might be that electric 12 thing that we built.
Maybe.
Yeah. It's a 6-string version of electric 12. It has.
He just says SSS Strat. I wonder which one that is.
Okay.
Eric asks a very poignant and timely question. Are you going to give the Hustler the 57 treatment? I think it would be very classy. Eric, I can tell you this. All of the Hustler models are going to have, well, should I tell him or no? I can tell him, right?
Yeah.
All of the Hustler models are going to have the gloss tops with the 73 backs. However, I don't think they're going to have lacquer on the tops, at least the first run.
Yeah.
2 of them, actually 3 of them are fabric. And I don't believe that at the point where you're trying to encourage the lumber to grow lungs and breathe through the finish, adding a course of glue and fabric and sealer and then spray lacquer on top of it so that it can crack is the most wise move. You have to put a slightly better top coat on to do that.
Yeah.
The other thing is, if our 73 finish, which is so unbelievably thin that you probably could breathe through it, certainly more than you could any kind of lacquer. If the whole back is covered with that, which is like hardly any finish at all, would the wood breathe even if it had just like kind of just a little bit of gloss on the top?
Yeah.
Okay.
So to me, the neat thing about the lacquer 57 top thing is the yellow hue that the lacquer imparts.
That is 100%
only
right.
There was a way that you could add a little bit of a yellow hue to another product.
Yeah. Yeah. But we will never know.
We'll never know.
Vinny says he actually liked PRS better before they went to lacquer.
I've heard that from more than one person.
Bobby Dale says the same thing.
Yeah. And I think I've heard it from some other, that's a real step in the wrong direction, I think. But the other thing though, because I don't go around looking at everybody's guitars, I don't know how lacquery their lacquer really is at this point.
Yeah.
And they can say, oh, it's nitrocellulose. Well, okay.
Yep.
Is it
really?
Or is it acrylic? Or is it water-based? Or is it, there's a lot of different lacquers.
Yeah. And I think that the word nitro gets used synonymously with any kind of lacquer.
Any lacquer.
At all.
Yeah.
Okay. Sean says satin finishes are definitely easier to take pictures of. Boy, you got that right, Sean. Paul says lacquer is too soft and checks too easily. Boy, does it smell good. But you got that right. It does
smell good when you're spraying it.
Lefty says that if you guys want him to print money, he will. Or something like that. Joe McCarthy says SSS Strat. Joe, which one is it? Because 3J Music just wrote that he owns the Smokestack Double, and I knew he did.
Yeah.
So what's the beefsteak?
Is it
just
what's the defining characteristic
of that guitar
that it deserved that wacky name?
Okay, a little bit of Texas Toast trivia.
Bridge does it have? I know you like to rename stuff, but a Strat.
No, but I'm going to tell you why it has the name beefsteak.
Okay.
So many of the things that I name derive their names from 70s skateboard stuff. And like, for example, the Pure Juice pickups. That's one of those things.
A wheel, yeah.
Well, you shouldn't have said that, but now everyone will go out and all the Pure Juice wheels will be gone. But there was a skateboard deck that my uncle had, and it was I don't know if it was a Sims, but it might have been, and it was the beefsteak, and it was in the 70s. The boards were fairly narrow, and the beefsteak was quite a bit wider, like it would become in the mid to late 80s.
Okay.
So it was one of the first wider boards, the beefsteak, and so that's why it's called that. But I wish I knew which one it was. Mike says he's going to email me about the Fabric Top Hustler prototype tomorrow. Which one, Mike?
He only saw the one.
He only saw that thing is bitching, by the way. Mike, if you want the one with the, okay, Chris and I were actually talking about, we have to order a bunch of mastery bridges and hardware for those, and it's going to sting, but those guitars are just going to be just so much more badass for it. Vinny says, if the wood could really breathe through the finish, I'd be more worried about mold growing in the cracks.
Yep. Yeah, we'd have a lot of rotted out guitars by now.
Joe says, you named it, Matt. Yeah, I did. And then he also says, it's on the wall behind me right next to the prostitute. I do come up with silly names.
So he has a beefsteak and the prostitute.
And a prostitute.
That's like a 70s TV show.
Beefsteak and the prostitute.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like a TV show. I think it's more like a movie.
Well, it could be.
Have to go to a special romance theater.
Yeah. It's like Chico and the Man, but less Chico, more.
The green one. Okay, Mike's into the green one. Mike, it's so excellent. Vinny says, "Oh, I don't know about the Pure Juice skateboard wheels. That's what they are. Sims Pure Juice." And Mike was saying, I was hoping that what okay, Mike, you know, and I know that on that guitar, what else could it get besides mastery? Like if it had that trim, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it couldn't get a Fender one.
No.
And it couldn't get the cheapo knockoff.
Yeah, and there's a couple other kind of hoochie ones now. I haven't tried them. They look cool, but the mastery stuff's awesome. At
the end of the day, it's hard to get any more hoochie than that mastery stuff.
Every time I play one of my guitars with the mastery, I'm like, yeah, this is nice. It feels like it's on ball bearings.
Kathy was hoping that you wanted mastery too. Okay, cool. 3J Music. Why does the smokestack double have its name? I think you're going to be disappointed when you hear that there was probably like a hamburger that I wanted to get one time called the Smokehouse Double, or it had onions, fried onions stacked on top of it. Haystack onions.
2-pickup Strat, and it had that color combination, that fairly traditional 3-tone sunburst, and it looked kind of bluesy. Maybe. I don't know.
I think that, it was kind of
Matt wanted a hamburger. That's the real thing.
I think it's Matt wanted a hamburger, but it's a cool sounding name. Butch wants to know, have we painted any 57 colors yet? We sure have, Butch. Dylan says, in my day, the screen was all scrambled for those movies. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Dylan. Sean says, I love how it was named stories. Maybe I should do a whole video. No one would watch it. The Uncle Matt stories about how these various things got their name.
Yeah. I saw Brett Hagen the other day, and we were talking about guitars and guitar names, and he was
the wheeler dealer.
Yeah. Well, for a while they all had women's names, and takeoffs were fun. And he has a guitar named Hillary Skank.
Hillary Skank. Yeah, that's right.
When we first named it that, I said it's just a takeoff of Hillary Swank, who was, fairly popular for $1 Million Baby and this and that. But Hillary Clinton was also a thing. And I think at first he thought we were taking a shot at Hillary Clinton.
No.
And we weren't. It was just a fun little, play on Hillary Swank.
If we were going to make fun of Hillary,
he's like, "Oh no, I know." And I'm like,
now,
you didn't always.
Now, here's the thing. You guys don't need to know what our politics are, because frankly, nobody cares.
No.
But let me ask you
first of all, I would never take a pot shot like that.
No.
I mean,
but if you and I were going to take a pot shot,
way dumber shit than that.
That's just it. If you and I were going to take a pot shot at Hillary Clinton, it wouldn't be Hillary Skank.
No.
Yeah,
no,
but we'd come up with some other dumb thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So. Yeah. And I mean, there were some named after characters in Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Yeah.
And so some of them are like real names.
There was a bunch of Annie Potts characters too.
Yeah, there were a bunch of Annie Potts characters.
Janine Melnitz
and all sorts of crazy. And we actually had a list going, but it got difficult to do after a while.
Okay, we're talking about skateboarding. This is great.
And then you named a guitar Mr. Poopy Butt.
Mr. Poopy Butthole. But that was from
Rick and Morty.
Rick and Morty, thank
you. But
you wouldn't let me keep it that name.
I think I might have ended up with that guitar.
Rod's talking about the skateboard with Leif Garrett and Tony Alva's in his 60s and he still rides pools, is what I understand, Rod. Mm-hmm. Terry says 35 years ago I painted some custom cars with lacquer paint. I also painted a few guitars with the same paint used on the cars. Well, Chris, when did they stop using lacquer on cars?
Well, I think a lot of custom cars were painted in lacquer into the 80s and 90s. Because you could still buy it, and there were a lot of repair shops used it because it was easy to use.
I know that I had a repair done on a Volkswagen that got it looked like an old guitar. It was terrible.
Yeah, they turned to shit within not very long. But in the automotive world for factory paints, I'm thinking 65 or 66 is when they started using different stuff.
Didn't your sister's car
have sister's 1960 Buick has a thing that is extolling the virtues of the all-new acrylic lacquer.
Ta-da! Bing!
Way more plastic in there than a bunch of bug butts and stuff like that.
Better living through less bug butts.
Less bug butts, yeah. That's shellac, but the idea is the same. Yeah, if you want something that'll fall apart even faster than nitrocellulose, use shellac.
Yeah, and
build it up and watch it fall apart.
I got to tell you, I am so excited that Mike is into that Hustler, the green.
Yeah.
Because I love that guitar. Yeah, and it was, when it was all drawn, I think Mike and I were talking about this, when those guitars, you remember coming in and I was like a man possessed. I had all these pictures all over the walls of what the guitars were. Drawings. Mm-hmm. And that was the one I liked the least.
I think it was one of the last ones too.
It was one of the last ones. And I'm like, I hated it. And I'm like, I hate it so much. I should make it into a guitar. Mm-hmm. Now it's my all-time, it's my favorite one. Everything about it. I'm like, this is it. Mike even said, this is the Hustler.
Yeah.
So,
so the funny thing is of the four that he was here to see, it's the most unique because it's fabric top. The others have fancy wood.
Yeah.
And that kind of changes things. So it'll still be interesting. I still don't know that I'm going to know what my favorite one is for several of them.
But you do know though that once you load it up with mastery goodness, that's going to be a little bit of a sealer of the dealer.
But
yeah.
But I mean, if you put all that stuff on one of the other shapes, would I like that better? Really, the whole thing is, once they're all together and you sit down and you start playing it, which one are you going to like?
I guess that's true. Yeah. Well, so have we beaten the homemade versus handmade? Have we broken the internet? We've come to no conclusions.
Yeah. When they elected the Pope, what do they call that? A
cabal?
No. They a consorum, something like that.
We didn't do that.
No,
I don't.
Is there white smoke coming out of the building?
No,
I hope not.
Me too. Well, but you and I do, Chris. We know.
Conclave.
I honestly don't.
Conclave. No, we have not. This is just the getting to know you phase.
This is just we don't have to have a conclave. Terry says that for show car finishes, they still like lacquer, I guess. Sean, do you like lacquer? Are you still here, Sean? I would imagine that Sean has probably sprayed a bunch of
lacquer is really hard to get.
I'm trying to get out of.
And you can't get colors anymore. So
Stringwood Guitar says his guitars are homemade by hand. Sean says Sean has a 2. I'm surprised he even bothered capitalizing it. No.
Yeah, I could tell by the paint work and the buff work that he does that he's no longer down with lacquer. The funny thing is, a lot of those show cars, they looked awesome for like a couple years, even though they never went outside and they never did it, and they just sort of slowly fell apart.
Yeah.
And
the paint, you mean?
Yeah, the paint. And you either had to tear all that stuff off and start over or do something else. Big Mike's assortment of crap says Conclave. And Mike 64 Commuter says, at Joy Kaminski, the first thing I said when I saw that hustler was Joy picked the fabric. And she did. Wait till you see some of the other ones that we've used that fabric several times. Well, Doc has a base with that, and we did I think we did a telly in that, and maybe one other. But you know what? That is funny because we usually don't use the same fabric. There's a handful that we will. A bunch of good color and a bunch of gold, and which is always the winner on that deal. And that particular one just laid out so great. It's perfect in every way. Joy says that she loves paisley, and that one green one is sweet. It is really cool. So we're gonna. Oh man, it is. It's gonna sting to buy. Yeah. I don't know how many $1,000 worth of mastery parts, but I have to suck it up and do it, right? It's gonna be about $1,000. I was trying to make it a bigger deal than it's still $1,000. Yeah, I mean, it's not guitars worth. Yeah, it's not a lot. Yeah, for bridges. Yeah. Well, so anyway, I urge you guys to look for quality, and let's end on this. I think that if the best you can do is the best you can do, and it looks great or it doesn't look so great, and you keep working at it, then that's all you can really ask of yourself. If you really put your heart and soul into it, right? And you really try to challenge yourself to do the best you can every single time, then you've got a handmade guitar. And I remember, Chris, do you think that you and I started instructing too early, or do you think that we knew enough to just go ahead and do it? I mean, I know that our workshops are wildly different now. The workshops have gotten better. I think we've gotten better as teachers. I think we knew everything that I think we knew enough to impart. We didn't know everything. No, we've learned things through the classes too, which is cool. But I think we've become better instructors. Yeah. And the classes have gotten better as we learned more. No doubt. But I think we knew enough. Okay. All right. Well, gang, it's just about time for us to get down to getting out of here. Doc says he bought some of that fabric for himself. Stringwood Guitar says, well, Yuns build cool stuff, so it costs money. Yeah, that ain't no joke, man. Being cool costs money. And there's just no two ways around that. Guys, only charging like sort of cool money. That's right. Yeah. I think that our guitars make you look way cooler than you actually are. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There will not be a reveal tomorrow. We've got some other stuff happening. We've got to get the shop cleaned up for a workshop on Monday. I'm really excited about the guitar we're going to be building. And I think the guys who are coming are they're excited to make guitars too. So I urge you guys to go over and hang out with some other cool people who are way cooler than I don't know where I'm going with that, but they're totally cool. And that's Dylan and his lovely wife, Leslie. Go over and check them out. Doc, the templates did not ship. I kind of forgot about them. Well, we want to make that that Matt's Sweet Truss Rod jig. Yeah. And the guy in charge of that called in sick. That's right. Okay. So we will see you on Sunday for something. And until then, guys, have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.